Okay, we are still going on with the notes for week 7, or note 7. I shut myself off by accident there, still getting used to technology and not doing this in front of a live classroom. So I had a few more comments I wanted to make on that, and we'll just add them in here. We had been talking about the Department of Environmental Management. We had been talking about sanitary disposal systems. And again, if you live in a place where there are municipal sewer systems, then by law you are required to tie into the municipal sewer system. You pay fees for using that service based on an annual fee for them to maintain the system, along with fees for how much waste you put into the system. And that waste is all handled either by Narragansett Bay, or there is a facility in Cranston. I think Woonsocket has its own sewer system. There are several municipal sewer systems throughout the state that handle the waste, and they probably handle the wastewater for 80% of the properties in the state. If you live outside one of those areas, then if you build any kind of building, you have to have a system approved by DEM to handle the wastewater from toilets and sinks and tubs and whatever. And there are all kinds of technical requirements for that. And it's had been in past decades, a big bone of contention. For a long period of time, the people that were in charge of the Department of Environmental Management were very much anti-development, and they used the denial of permits for sanitary disposal systems as a way to basically control development and to prevent development in areas that they thought should be left natural. This reached the point where about 40 years ago, one of the governors basically said to them, if you don't figure out some new rules, I have a plan. The plan will be is we abolish you as an agency and let anybody build whatever they want, wherever they want. So they changed their regulations, and technology changed. If you went back 40 or 50 years ago, the technologies that were being used were basically the same technologies that the Romans used 2,000 years ago, which was digging holes in the ground to put in holding tanks for water and laying out what they call leach fields, fields of gravel underground with pipes in them to disperse the water. Since that time, environmental engineers have come into their own, and they've created all kinds of different systems so that even on lots that technically would have been too small or were partially wet and muddy, it wouldn't have worked, you can now build systems that meet the requirements. One of the things that if you're ever buying land, you have to keep in mind is to check to see if it's serviced by municipal sewers or not. If it's not serviced by municipal sewers, then you need to determine if the seller of the land has had what's called a percolation test done. A percolation test is basically they dig a hole in the land, they pour water in it, and they see how long it takes for the water to drain out. And depending on how fast or slow the water drains, that tells you, number one, if you can even build on it, or it also tells you how extensive or small a septic system you'll have to have. And of course, the more difficult it is for water to drain away through the ground, the more expensive and exotic type of septic system you're going to have to build. So it's a very important thing. There is a law, there is a Rhode Island statute that says that if a person is selling a piece of land and no percolation test is done, the buyer has a certain amount of time to basically rescind the transaction if they find out later that they can't build because they're not able to put in a waste system. Another agency, very important, is called the Coastal Resource Management Council. It is a Rhode Island agency. It has jurisdiction over all building construction within 200 feet of any tidal waters. Now, when we think of tidal waters, most of us would think of Charlestown Beach or Narragansett or Scarborough or First or Second Beach in Newport, but you have to realize Narragansett Bay comes all the way up to the waterfall in downtown Pawtucket under the bridge by the Slater Mill. That even the lower part of the Blackstone River at that point has a tide. It goes up and down. Because Narragansett Bay takes up about a quarter of all of Rhode Island and permeates some 40 miles north of the ocean into the state, The Coastal Resource Management Council has a far greater reach than most people realize. So if you are trying to do any kind of building change of existing buildings, any kind of development within 200 feet of a tidal water, you have to also pass your plans past the Coastal Resource Management Council, and they actually have the ability to just say, no, we think in order to protect the environment and the coastal resources, you can't do that. They are particularly sensitive about changes to anything around the salt marsh ponds on the southern part of the state, any of the sand dune beaches that line the southern part of the state. So you would have the greatest amount of difficulty trying to develop and build there from them, whereas when you get back up into Providence Harbor and East Providence and Cranston and Warwick, they're probably not quite as picky in terms of what they allow and what they don't allow. But just be aware that they are there and they have to be reckoned with. And if you put up even something as simple as a dock, a small dock, and they do not have their approval, they have the power to go to court and to have you ordered to take it down. So again, that ends our discussion on zoning and municipal controls. Again, this is a very large area of law, a very large area of real estate law, and there are a number of attorneys and law firms that make a good living. They have a large practices just dealing with these types of restrictions and in either representing cities and towns to prevent development that they believe shouldn't be allowed in their town, or on the other side, helping people who want to build and develop meet the rules, meet the restrictions, and get their projects approved. All right, over and out for this section.